What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be discussing Saturn in the third house. So, let's get into it. Saturn, the planet of restriction, limitation, delay, reality, lessons, karma, older people, slow moving processes, mechanical processes, and so much more. Third house, original house of Gemini, the house of communication, the house of like your analytical intelligence, okay, your worldly intelligence, how well you memorize things, how you write, all right. It's the house of media, siblings, your everyday neighborhood, day-to-day journeys, and all that good stuff. So when Saturn comes here, it's an interesting position. So we always say these placements, when we're just saying the planet in the house is always contingent on what is the sign and what aspects are it's making. Sign here is very, very important because this is going to be the sign of your worldly intelligence. It's going to show how you process these Mercurian things, which Saturn is influencing. So when Saturn is like in his own sign or exalted, he doesn't really restrict as much. Okay, there will be things, but it won't be major. But other signs is going to be pretty in your face. So it's not a guarantee. But the first thing we need to know is that, all right, people with Saturn in the third house, they process things slowly. They are slow learners. Not to say they are unintelligent. Nope. But check it out. It's one of these placements where, because first, second, third, fourth, this shows a lot of early life. What happens with Saturn in the third, and I'm living it right now with my nephew, he has Saturn in the third. Like, there's this communication thing. Like, you may have these little communication problems early or learning problems, and people try to make you seem like you're not as smart as the other kids. But that's wrong. And what happens is over time, these people with Saturn in the third house realize what kind of learners they are, and this speaks volumes about people in general. We're all different kind of learners. So for the most part, people with Saturn in the third are just slow learners. They process things slowly. But what happens here, especially in earth signs, okay, Saturn gets a mechanical mind, or Saturn gets a really a cool hobby with the hands. His third house relates to the hands, so we can see mechanics from here. We can see, beauticians, lots of things with the sculptors, lots of sculptors with Saturn in the third. We can see, but yeah, man. So these guys aren't like, bam, I know this answer, bam, I know this answer. They're more so like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to figure this out in my own time. And when they get it, they get it. Third house, house of siblings, what it does here is it creates these different dynamics amongst the siblings. One, you might be that sibling that has to shoulder everything. You may, like, Saturn teaches you the lesson of responsibility early on. I've seen this a couple times. Saturn in the third, Sun in the fourth, parent, passes away early, or Sun in the 12th, Moon in the 12th, parent passes away early. You're the oldest. You assume full responsibility of the kids. Astrology is a beautiful science, guys. So that's one aspect of with siblings. Then the next aspect is where your siblings they upstage you maybe, or it's an obvious rivalry. Okay? And what this is, it's just karma. It's really just karma. It's karma playing, because Saturn is about lessons. So within this house, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and one of those is about like sibling rivalry and stuff like that. It can get too crazy if Mars is there, but Saturn there alone is just gonna create one of the siblings to feel different. Okay, maybe Saturn in the third person with Saturn in a good house, maybe they're that golden child. Okay, and that creates some friction with their sibling through that, or it could be vice versa. Next thing we see here is a really cool aspect of this placement. We can see principals, we see teachers, okay, with Saturn in the third house. Because like I said, not always, that's not that you're unintelligent. It's just that you learn differently. And this, say you have a teacher who or a principal, they are going to be very Saturn like and making sure you follow the rules and you do things correctly, because they themselves, in the way that they learn, they're very Saturn like, organized, disciplined, blah blah blah. So that's one thing, but overall what it shows in the third house, Saturn is responsible, especially in the neighborhood. So that teacher or that principal could have grown up in that town, gone back, become a principal, or become a teacher there. It can be a counselor, a counselor in the neighborhood, someone who does good for the neighborhood, or really becomes a staple in the neighborhood through a business or something like that. And the reason it's like that, Saturn, like I said, loves doing routine, everyday things. So they set up shop and find an everyday routine in the neighborhood. Next thing with Saturn in the third house is that as a child, the mental process is very mature. All right. And because of this, it can create, let's say that aspect doesn't happen where, you think you're intellectually inferior. You may be the opposite. You may just be very very advanced in your thinking and your learning as a child, and people treat you mature, or you just process things maturely, because Saturn represents just that, maturity and things like that. So with it being in the third